Hey everyone, this is Steve Weintraub with Collider, and I'm thrilled to be with the people behind The Wonder. I want to start with congratulations on the movie, and thank you so much for coming into our studio today. I have tons of questions about your movie, I promise, but I like throwing a few curveballs right at the beginning, which hopefully you've not been asked. If someone is actually, and it could be this project, but if someone has actually never seen anything that you've directed before, what is the first thing you want them watching and why? And if someone has never read anything that you've read anything that you've written before, what is the first thing you want them reading and why?
Well, who am I to judge? But maybe a good way in would be A Fantastic Woman, which is a film from 2017. Why? Because I guess it has many elements that my other films do have. Mainly like putting at the center of the narrative a character that should not be at the center of a narrative according to what society thinks or tends to think. So maybe that would be my recommendation.
That was your film that made me want you to direct The Wonder. I would probably pick Room, which I wrote as a novel and then Lenny Abrahamson made as a film, because for some reason that character of a child who's grown up in a locked room seems to hook everyone. Just the widest variety of readers and audiences seem to care about that kid and his situation.
If you could get the financing to make anything that you want, what would you make and why? This is usually the question, like if you have that dream project you've been trying to kick around.
I don't know what to answer. Sorry.
I have a big musical. So if you in your pocket have the budget for that, 20-person singing and dancing musical, that's what I want to make next.
I hate asking the generic question, but most of the people watching this will have not seen the movie yet. How have you been describing the movie to friends and family, or how would you like to describe the how, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, The Wonder is the story about a nurse, an English nurse, who is summoned by a group of notables to observe a young girl, 11 years old, who is allegedly surviving without food for months. So the town is sort of like upside down because of this situation. They have to bring things back to normal. And the nurse thinks is going to uncover the hoax in 10 minutes, but then that's not what happens. And as she becomes more and more fascinated by the girl, and a sort of like love for her emerges, she will also have to understand if something more ominous is really happening there. And that nurse, a rationalist, a scientifically minded woman that starts the story kind of like looking down at these superstitious people, ends up doing the wildest things that are somehow way beyond the limits of reason, in order to save herself and hopefully save the girl too.
I thought you did a fantastic job helming and doing this movie, and I'm just curious, what is it like for a director showing? What was it like for you watching it for the first time? I'm curious if you were on set and what you know what I mean? How nervous are you when you hit play in the screening room? Do you know what I mean?
I was on set for about 10 different days of the filming, and I was particularly moved that these were the landscapes of my childhood, and yet I was seeing them afresh through Sebastián's eyes. And I found that the cinematography and the directorial decisions about the landscape and so on brought something absolutely new to it that I hadn't seen there while I was writing the book.
If I'm not mistaken, could be wrong, but this was Netflix UK's first
Commission.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. And can you sort of talk about working with Netflix? Because I've spoken to a lot of filmmakers and they all praise, the relationship with them in terms of the creative freedom and giving good notes.
I mean, in this case was the same. They were the only ones that were willing to bet for the film in a strong way, so we could make the film we wanted to make. So I'll always be grateful for that, because there were other versions of the film where probably the results would have been less. I don't know. There's something about the visual, an attempt for visual splendor that the film has.
Well, let me just say that it's very cinematic. It feels like a movie, and I think it comes from the budget you had. And maybe if you had told this in 3 weeks, or much less
Exactly.
schedule,
That's what I'm
you would
trying to
not
say.
have those
Yeah.
shots that you have.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, they were great, and it was also like an honor to be the first film that they fully supported. I'm talking about the UK slate. So no, yeah, it's been a great relationship, and I think we're all happy to have made the film we wanted to make.
Something that I found very interesting was the way, and I'm just going to talk about the opening, was how you open the movie. And I'm curious, what was the motivation for starting the film the way that you do? I don't know how much you want to say. So
Yeah, not too much. I call it the frame. Well, I guess because it's a film about belief systems, it is a film about believing and how much we need to believe, either by default or choice, in stories in order to live and cross life. There's no way you can inhabit this world without some sort of narrative that gives the world a meaning that might not have. We don't know. So in this story, belief systems collide. You have science as the greatest belief system, as I consider it, the greatest conquest by humanity, is a belief system that holds doubt in its heart, is willing to expand, change, and adapt, as opposed to other belief systems like, in this case, what is represented in the film via faith, which is people that found the truth and are not willing to move from there. So these things collide.
I like the way you use collide.
Collide. It's because in Spanish we use a similar word, and that's the one I know that works. So I just wanted the viewer to be aware that they were going to be believing in the film, just like the characters believe in their stories. And I just wanted to here and there gently reminded them that they were believing, and the mechanisms they were using are not dissimilar to the ones that the characters are using, and therefore maybe as they watch the film they could wonder, what they believe in, and if they believe by choice or default, and if those beliefs can be expanded, adapted, are they elastic or rigid?
And what you grasped from the novel even is that the story is very meta anyway. It's about somebody who's being paid to observe. It says to the audience, like, what would you be taken in by? How would you interpret this? And to observe something and not intervene is a decision in itself. So the whole story really is about the process of being an audience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, that's very true. And I think that's one of the things that made me want to do a film. I loved that sort of like meta element of the novel. She's observing everyone else's narratives. And then in order to save the girl, she has to transcend her own.
One of the things in the film, and I don't know what that right term is, but you're zooming in or dollying in a lot on a lot of shots and a lot of characters. Can you sort of talk about the way where you like placing the camera, how you decided on those kinds of shots?
Well, one of the main co-creators in this film is Ari Wegner, the cinematographer. We drew the entire film together a couple of weeks before shooting, after finding the locations. So we found the calligraphy of the film together, and then we were looking for these long shots. Many scenes happen in just one shot. The camera is always moving, it's sort of like a winged camera. we wanted that sort of like floating state, dreamy, a dreamy world, a dreamy landscape, a fable, a story in which you are believing, kind of approach. And then the camera is always, not always, but usually pushing in, either on dollies or cranes, or there's only one moment where when it pushes back, which isn't precisely at the height of the climax of the film.
I like being spoiler free since most people have not seen it. So I'm curious. You've written. Which of your things that you've written would you love to see adapted?
I'm working on a film adaptation of my novel, The Pull of the Stars, which is set during the Spanish flu epidemic in a labor ward. And I'm relishing the challenge of taking something so physical and slow as birth and telling it cinematically in a way which doesn't oversimplify it the way births are usually shown on screen.
One of the things that streaming has given us is the ability to TV series are very popular on streaming. 4 episodes, 8 episodes. How do you decide what should be a series, what should be a movie, and the debate between the two? And I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm just as drawn to writing, probably not long form, but miniseries as features. But I don't know, there's still something about the momentum of a feature, the idea that people will watch it in just one block, and that there's a sort of unbearable squeezing of the story into maybe an hour and a half. And for certain projects, I think only that squeeze will produce the kind of intensity I'm looking for, even though as a consumer, I'm a huge fan of miniseries.
I'm always curious about the editing room or the editing process because it's where it all comes together. So talk a little bit about the challenges you faced when you got in the editing room, or what you learned from friends and family screenings that impacted the finished film.
Well, I mean, because it's a very precise and designed script, in the sense that it's not that you can play around with the structure too much in the edit, because it has elements of suspense, and it is about sort of this investigation that she's going through. So the bits and pieces are slowly coming together for her at the same time for the viewer. So the room for changing too much things wasn't there, but it was an extremely precise work. I mean, we needed to kind of like dive in, and it's a very precise editing. That's what I'm trying to say. With Christina Hatherington, the editor, I mean, it's one of the most difficult films I've edited or witnessed how it was edited, because I was there with her. But Christina did, she was really the editor, of course. But what I'm trying to say, it wasn't easy to edit, to find the right tone, the more precise moment of each performance, and put them together in a way that they would click and seem effortless, which is, I guess, the goal.
He had to cut the scene in which I was an extra, which was clearly an agonizing decision. But I felt that gave my experience as an extra the classic quality of being an extra and doing all that work and not ending up in the movie. So I feel I've really been an extra.
Did you get to keep the deleted scene? Do you have it at home?
I have just the visuals of it. That's all I was able to harvest off the raw footage they gave me, is the visuals of me briefly walking past Florence Pugh and Kieran Hines. Yeah, so that's a key feature of my family video for the year.
What are you actually most excited? A little generic, I apologize, but what are you most excited for people to see with the film?
Well, we have this breakthrough star who was 11 when we filmed, Kíla Lord Cassidy. I'm thrilled that our movie, she's had other roles, but our movie, I think, will be the one that really brings her to that world audience that she absolutely deserves.
Yeah, she's great. I would say the performances in general, especially the two women at the center, like Florence Pugh, she's a magnificent actress. I consider her to be incredible, and she's the heart of the film and the soul of the film, and she has this duel with this girl, actoral duo, and they are both like challenging each other, and I think that's something very special to watch because it's a relationship that is quite unusual in a film. So I think the two of them, that's exciting to share the film, and so people can have the chance to see them both. Yeah,
Yeah,
in the arena.
She's a fantastic actor. Did you cast her prior to her getting the Marvel role, or was it after the Marvel role? Because her star has really blown up in the last, year or two.
Technically, it was after the Marvel role was shot, but before it was released. So I wouldn't say that was, at least for me, a big part of the equation. It was more really coming from the admiration for her as an artist and the quality she has, that she makes you want to be on her side, despite the fact that in the film she's doing things that are quite extreme and could be qualified at least as morally complex, and you are with her, and that's because Florence is all about like total integrity. She has that.
No, completely. I buy into what she's selling on screen. Absolutely. We've been asking everyone coming into our studio the same few questions. I'm going to ask you before I let you go. What TV series would you love to guest direct? And what TV series would you love to guest write?
Well, I most recently saw Under the Banner of Heaven, and I can imagine plunging into that world, writing-wise.
Maybe if there's a new season of Mad Men, I would love to, eventually, be there.
What movie do you think you've seen the most?
In my life?
Yeah.
As a teenager, I watched Out of Africa 7 times in cinemas, just worshipping the two of them, imagining myself somehow in between Robert Redford and Meryl Streep.
Well, a film that I keep, watching and watching over the years is 2001. It's just endless. It's a classic in the sense that it will always be young.
And also, every time you watch it, you can get something new.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
It's probably the film, along with Vertigo.
Yeah, I heard Hitchcock, he's okay. On that note, I need to wrap with the two of you, and I'm just going to say congratulations on the film, and I really look forward to it being out in cinemas and on Netflix so people can experience it. You guys did a tremendous job with this, and thank you so much for coming in to our studio.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for the technical questions about camera movements. You don't get much of that these days. Fantastic.